I think of all the kind of modern Western instruments that are popular, bass is the easiest instrument, in my opinion, to get good at, and probably the hardest to be great at. The difference between good bass players to me and great bass players is 100% brain. You know, a good bass player has a nice tone and technique and plays, and a great bass player knows exactly what to play when, and more importantly, when to not play anything, what sound to get in the right moments. Like, this is the kind of stuff that elevates the music and doesn't just sustain it.
Hey, everybody, we are sitting here today with Mr. Scott Devine. My name is Ian, and we are sitting today with the great Michael League. You know him, of course, as the band leader and bassist of the Grammy award-winning band Snarky Puppy, but he's also a solo artist, experienced sideman, producer, arranger, and entrepreneur, working with groups and artists such as Bocante, Lala Hathaway, Chris Thiele, Joshua Redman, David Crosby. The list goes on. And he's also the owner and founder of the record label Ground Up Music and puts on the annual Ground Up Music Festival. He is one of the truly great artists of our generation. We're so lucky to have him with us today. Welcome, Mr. Michael League.
That sounds like a dare. I dare you to do this list of things. I dare you.
God.
Do you ever sort of like, consider your life choices, Michael?
I just, every time I hear someone say he's an entrepreneur, I just hear the word unemployed. But I'll take it.
But it's true, man. It's so true. And it's incredible.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, if you stay unemployed long enough, people call you an entrepreneur. I guess that's the secret.
How long did you feel that? Like when you felt like you were unemployed and you were not making it work with Snarky, how long did that feel? Or how long did that take before you felt like you crested the hill?
Well, the band started like 19 years ago, so I'd say about 19 years. I felt that way. There's a certain point where things got better, for sure, and where it was like, okay, we can survive, and like now we're comfortable and we can sell tickets and these things. That was wonderful. But I don't think anyone in the band really feels like, yeah, we made it, we're done, that's it,
Sure.
So I think that when we got to this point in which people were making enough money to make a living, obviously the attitude in the band changed and people got a little less permanently stressed, which was our condition for a long time. So it took, to get to that point, 12 years.
Since we're talking about the early days with Snarky Puppy, can we talk about, because I've got a great clip of you playing the original Snarky Puppy bass, which actually wasn't a P bass. So can I play that clip and then we'll get into how you got into the P bass and that thing. But even before that, dude, that bass on your left-hand side, what the heck is it? Give us the story about that bass there, and then we're going to jump into this next clip.
So this is a bass made by this incredible Italian luthier who lives like on the side of a hill in Tuscany. His name is Bruno Bacci, Bacci, and Bruno is a real, like, a total character. He's become one of my really, really, really good friends. A great cook also. If you ever have the pleasure of going to his place, you'll eat incredibly well, and he sends me recipes. In fact, just before this, I made a recipe that he sent me for our camera crew.
Oh, amazing.
And this is a bass that he made from a piece of wood that had been kind of infested by a woodworm. So that's why it has all these holes in it. So we called it the Woodworm bass. It's actually called the Amrita bass, which is, it was like a kind of a test model that he made.
Got it.
Gave to me, and then it became my signature bass. That now is for sale through Chicago Music Exchange, I think, and some other places in the U.S.
Oh, wicked! So people can actually buy those basses.
Yeah, you can buy it now. Yeah, it's just like as of this month, I think now it's available.
Congratulations, man!
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't really do anything. He's the one who did it, but thank you. Yeah, I guess
very cool.
But yeah, it's a P bass. It's beautiful. It's probably the only P bass I've ever played that's not vintage that makes me feel like myself.
Does it sound like a vintage instrument? Has it got that flavor?
Yeah, it sounds incredible. I mean, it also, nothing sounds exactly like a vintage P bass, but I think sometimes it's actually more appropriate. I mean, it's beefy, you know. It's
Got that
warm.
real beefy
Sure
sound,
is.
doesn't it? Yeah. Oh,
You know, I mean, and it's so even because that's the other thing is those I'm a vintage P fiend, and I love all of them, but they're all kind of like very difficult members of your family. You know what I mean? Like
yes.
because
Quirks.
it's like, oh, the E string sounds so great up till the 7th fret on this bass, and then from 7 to 10, like you don't want to play there, you know, and then or like, oh, it's so, you know, they all have like their things that make them beautiful and different, like snowflakes, but they're also
annoying
pain.
annoying
Yeah, like
snowflakes,
really
yeah.
annoying snowflakes that you have to get to know so that they don't make you look like an idiot, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
a
what I
drunk
love about
uncle.
this, it's yeah, exactly. They're the drunk uncles of the bass world, aren't they? P basses, vintage P basses, and this is just so even and so flexible and beautiful. I can play it on any gig, you know.
Oh, amazing. Well, what I'm going to share with you right now, you might have not seen this clip for years. Let me just pull it up now, actually. Check this out.
Oh, my
when
God.
was this? When was this?
This was this
It's
is
got the top not going on.
yeah. This was in the man
yeah.
bun era of Snarky Puppy. Yeah.
But check this out. Before I hit play, let me say this. You first came over here to do that thing at Leeds University with some kind of exchange program or something, right? I can remember Bill said, this guy called Mike Leake's coming over. He's got a Ken Smith. He's got a Ken. And I was like, so when I always associate before YouTube and before you found the P-Bass, which we can talk about in just a second, I always associate, oh yeah, Mike Leake that plays the Ken Smith. It was always that there was a thing. But also, what really impressed me about this clip is it sounds like Snarky Puppy all the way back then. It still sounds like I was like, holy shit, still sounds like Snarky Puppy.
This is a very interesting gig because this is the first gig that Bernard Wright ever played with Snarky Puppy ever.
Wow.
Wild.
That's you see him reading music actually in the video. It's the first concert he ever played with us, and this made this was like the beginning of a huge shift in Snarky Puppy musically, in the musical direction. It was like the moment in which we really kind of like these kind of white college musicians actually started mixing musically with the black gospel and R&B scene in Dallas. This was like the moment. This is like a couple months after I got my church gig where Bernard was in the house band and
amazing.
And Philip Lassiter, who then became the arranger for Prince's NPG horn section and all this kind of stuff. Oh, wow. And it was crazy. The church band was great. My first Sunday at that church, the band was the RH Factor without Roy Hargrove. That was Jason J.T. Thomas, Bobby Sparks, Bernard Wright, Todd Parsno, Keith Anderson. It was crazy, Yeah. So this is like one of the kind of pivotal moments in Snarky Puppy history, actually.
And what year was it?
I would guess
I bet I can
2007. I would guess.
And by the way, just before I press play, for you guys not around in 2007, this was like HD video. Like this was
Yes.
blowing people's freaking minds.
We would
I was
see
like,
this and
"Whoa."
think like, this is the greatest quality ever.
Yeah.
And then you go
I
back
can't even
and you're like,
imagine
what?
this is online. Anyway, check it out. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Come on. So
I
good.
love it.
So good.
I can't even. That bass tone makes me want to scratch my eyes out with.
Is it
dull,
weird for you listening to that?
dull knives?
Okay, but can you talk about then the taste change? Because obviously now we associate you with a P bass, you're playing your signature bass, and I've heard you too talk about this, but can you talk about then it didn't make you want to scratch your eyes out? So what changed?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the bass. It's not that I don't like the tone of the bass. It's my tone. You know, I mean, now if you hand me that bass now in 2023, the bass is not going to sound like that. It's going to sound probably actually like a P bass, because that's the sound that I hear in my head, and that's the sound that I get with my fingers no matter what bass I play. Like, obviously, you know, I'm sure you've talked about that a lot in your lessons and podcasts, that it's like your tone comes from you, not from basses, but basses highlight certain parts of it.
For sure.
I mean, for me, that, like, yeah, I mean, I think that's just how I heard bass. I mean, I grew up, you know, in the 90s and the early 2000s, and like high fidelity boutique,
of course,
you know, Bubinga, you know, like that was the vibe, you know.
Give me some Bubinga.
Yeah, 6-string Bubinga basses. You know. I don't even know if I'm saying that word. Is it Bubinga, Bubinga? I don't know.
You're fine.
Bubinga.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was like, that was what I grew up with. So even if I didn't necessarily want to sound like that, it's just kind of how I, you know. It's funny though, because the things that I'm playing are not so different. Like, I think my sound was there in that moment. My sound in terms of taste, in terms of musical decisions, but in terms of tone, it was.
The lines that you're playing are very similar to, you know, how you would play now. It's like you've got that kind of vocabulary. You can hear that, but but the sound's wildly different. Yeah.
Well, and there's something about those old basses, those like Ken Smith hi-fi basses, that the top end, when you dig, you hear this. They don't give up in the same way that a P bass with flats does. They kind of give you this thin top sizzle sound. And is that the thing that you're responding to sometimes? Like when you dig in?
I mean, do you want me to list all the things that I hate about that? I got you. Number one, I'm playing way too hard. Like I'm doing the opposite of the thing that I tell every bass player to do in the first 10 seconds of the first bass lesson that I would give to someone, which is, like everything in life, things go better when you're relaxed.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm really obsessed with tennis right now. Like, I played when I was a kid a little bit, and then I didn't play for 20 years, and now, just like last year, I'm just like, I don't even think about music anymore. All I think about is
Are you obsessed with tennis?
Yeah, completely. And now everyone in the band, like, there's like 6 guys in the band who are playing now. Like, it's the exact same with tennis. It's the exact same with anything. With like anything in life, when you're tense, things don't go well. Things don't flow, things don't sound good, taste good, feel good, you know. And when you're relaxed, they do. And to get low end out of a bass, you must play light and relaxed. If you want no low end in your bass, then play hard. And that's exactly what I was doing. That was the advice that I took.
Would you be willing? Would you be willing to pick up that bass and kind of show us what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Like, could you do a demo of playing something too hard, getting not enough low end, and then how you would modify that to get it done today?
You notice it way more if you're playing in a large room with a big, like, with PA system with subs. I mean, then you really, really feel the difference. But so I'll play Justin Timberlake. What's that song? Right. So I'm playing medium right now.
Yeah.
So now if I play hard. Wow, I can't even do that.
Doesn't sound.
Now if I play soft.
Right. It's soft and medium sounds like you're in control.
Totally. Yeah, and also it's supportive and not distracting, I think, also because there's another thing about energy. It's like, I mean, I don't want to go into like this kind of like Reiki vibe here, but like, you know, I don't even know what Reiki is. I just use that word because that's
I was about to say, are you into it? No. Okay.
No, it's just a word I hear people say, and I think maybe it. Anyway,
Feel free.
I mean, energy-wise, when you're playing in a way that is where you're giving a lot of energy. Like, it's felt. It's felt in the tone. It's felt in your presence on stage. It's felt generally. It's like people will say, "Oh, that person, I don't know, they make me nervous." And it's the same on stage. You know, you can be that person on stage that makes everyone nervous, or you can be that person on stage that makes everybody feel really comfortable and secure.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you know, at a dinner also, not just when you're playing music or whatever, you know, or on a tennis court, you know, with your doubles partner, it's like the idea is that if you put off an energy that's fluid and mellow and supportive and relaxed, it makes space for other things. And those other things are where all the juju comes from, you know? So I think it's just objectively, just like, don't ever play an instrument hard, really. You know, I mean, there's a time and place. There is a time and place where that tone and that energy. It's also to do with the front
end of the note, isn't it? Like, if you look at the waveform, if you played really hard, you're going to get this big spike at the front end of the note, and then that's going to die down, and then you're going to set your volume on your amp to that large boomy, like that waveform. So it's going to go right, like that.
Right.
But whereas if you play softer, you're going to get a fatter, a more consistent actual note, and then you can increase the volume of your amp, and everybody's going to feel like, oh, to your earlier point, Mike, oh, it's bassier, sounds bassier.
Right.
And the reason is because you reduce down, you've got a more consistent note when you play the note, and it just feels bassier to everybody, which is a pain in the ass, because I do tend to play quite hard. Like,
but sometimes it's the right thing, you know.
Sometimes it is, yeah. But it kind of annoys me about myself. Like, I think it's part of what I do. Like, if I played sort of like, I don't know, you can hear them. And sometimes that gets in the way when I'm playing something that's more smooth. I'll default to the louder approach or the harder approach rather than the softer approach that gives that feeling of support if I nail it. So I'm kind of like consistently having to check myself on that, because I do like it sometimes when you get that, you know, the dynamics that sort of like jump in and out of a line, but then making sure that when I'm actually playing something that should be supportive, I need to drop that attack down so it's not overwhelming.
Totally, yeah. I mean, there's a time and place for everything, for every sound. I mean, every sound has a situation in which it's the most appropriate sound, I think, you know. But I think generally when you're recording, you want your bass waveforms to look like sausages and not to look like speaker cones.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
you know what I mean. And like you said about that, you adjust your volume to the peaks. Right? But if you're playing consistently and there are no clear peaks, it actually means you can turn the bass way up in your mixes.
Front of house pushes
and on stage. If you're playing consistent, then actually people hear way more of you, you know? And the first thing that I was going to say when I played, when I finished playing that Justin Timberlake bass line was like, you're going to want to turn that third one up so that people hear the difference. Because it's true, because it's like, if I play quieter, you turn it up, everything's even, there's a big old low end on it. And it's beautiful, but yeah, sure, certain moments. I played in like a Ukrainian industrial metal band when I first moved to New York, and like that was jazz bass, digging in with a pick, you know. I mean, it was like, you know, have my hair teased out, you know, had fake glasses. I mean, yeah, you know, that was the vibe, you know.
Yes.
And
it is like genre specific, right? And sometimes I think of, you know, the bass players that have the most sort of pronounced sound, where you think about what Geddy Lee sounds like, you think about what Chris Squire sounds like. Some of the attackers have such a signature sound to their note, but it comes at the, I think, expense sometimes of playing with other people, like as a side musician, right? Totally. Like if you have your own thing in your band, maybe you get known for that thing and it's awesome. Great. Yeah. You know, Les Claypool tapping and, you know, I mean, hitting his bass, but that same approach might not necessarily work as a side musician in another thing, right?
Yeah, and also I think those bands that you listed, like Claypool, Geddy Lee with Rush, the music is based around the players' sounds.
Exactly right.
All of them. Also Lifeson sound or Pert's sound, you know, Peart, Payart, Rupert, another name I don't know how to pronounce, like Babinga. I don't know any of these things. Reiki. I think I know how to say that. I just don't know what it is. I just know it has to do with energy. So the advantage that all these musicians have, of course, is that the music that they're making is designed around each individual's sound.
So right.
When someone calls you to play a session, you can't just come in and be like, all right, we're changing the music to fit my sound. You know what I mean? You have to be the one to be flexible. And so I think it's important in this day and age as bass players, unless you really are confident that you're going to be as successful as Geddy Lee, I think that it's an advantageous thing, even if you are Geddy Lee. I think it's advantageous to be versatile sonically and to have different colors and textures at your disposal to use whenever you like. You know, like Pat Metheny always says about Stephen Rodby, who's the bass player in the Metheny band for many years, you know, he said, like, what I love about Stephen is that he can play anything in the world that I ask him to, but he only plays what's necessary. You know,
can you just dip it in, because we said we would, like about 20 minutes ago before we got carried away. Let's talk about P-Bass, because I think it's a really interesting story how you went from that sound, bringing it back to what we were talking about before with the Ken Smith, to the sound that you have had for the last, you know, well, and all of the years that people have known you, you've been known for that P-Bass sound, and probably were one of the key players that I think that made it so popular. I think that there was, back in the day, that big resurgence of the P-Bass. You know, LaFave was playing it, yourself was playing it, then everybody started playing P-Basses, because there was a time where P-Basses were uncool.
Very.
You know, I can remember that time. And I'm sure that you can as well, actually, Mike. When did you first start playing the P-Bass?
Well, I was playing that Ken Smith. I think I was the only person in the world who owned a 4-string Ken Smith, maybe. And I had a gig with Snarky Puppy at a club in Dallas called the Prophet Bar, opening for a band called Rudder. Rudder was a band with Keith Carlock on drums, Henry Hay on keyboards, Chris Cheek on saxophone, and my favorite bass player, Tim LaFave, on bass. My favorite living bass player, I should say. We were playing the opening set. I think at the end of sound check or just before the gig, something, I can't remember. My battery died because it was an active bass. And I think I had never changed the battery, you know? So the battery died, and I was like, oh man, this is bad. And Tim said, man, just play my bass, you know? It's fine. And I was like, oh, yeah, great. Okay, perfect. Yeah, you know, because I also had to set up the merch table. I had to, you know, I was the manager at that time. And so I was like, you know, doing a million things that had nothing to do with music. So I took the bass, and, you know, I was playing a Ken Smith, round wounds, action that you couldn't slide a sheet of paper under, you know? And then Tim hands me this 70s P-bass that weighs, you know, like a ton of bricks. The action's like this, and it's got, like, it fit like a baby's head between the, you know, the fingerboard and the strings. And I wouldn't. And I'm assuming
that your Ken Smith, you could fit about like a Rizla paper in between.
Maybe a sheet of paper, you know, if it was like the 1-ply, you know. Yeah. And he had flat wounds, so I was like, okay, high action flat wounds, super heavy. Let's try it. We started playing the gig, and I couldn't play any of my parts because it was so physically difficult for me to play the bass that, like, I ended up playing like 1/4 of the notes that I normally played on a Snarky Puppy gig. And that sounded 4 times better in the context of the band.
Did you think it sounded bad?
I totally felt it. I mean, I could feel it. You know, I was playing it, and instead of like, I go like, you know, and it was like, oh, wow. Everyone seems to be having a good time. You know, like the band is really sounding a lot better, you know. And I was also having fun, and I remember just feeling more like a drummer than a melodic instrumentalist. Like, I remember feeling like my approach to playing became more just about rhythm and not really about pitches. And I was just like, by the end of the gig, I was like, this is it. This is the sound that I've always heard in my head when I heard bass. And thanks Tim LaFave, well, for like a million things, but also for that. And the next tour, I found a 76 P bass in a pawn shop in South Carolina, and I paid $700 for it, and got it fixed up a little bit. And then that was my you know, war bass for many, many years.
Which one was that? Sorry.
It's maple with a black pick guard and a maple neck. It's on the that DVD DVD. I just sounded very 39 years old. It's on that this VHS that we made 20 years ago. It's on this film that we made in 2010 maybe, called Tell Your Friends. 2009. I think we recorded it in 2009. It came out. No. 2008. I don't know. It's on a film that we made called Tell Your Friends, which was the first in-studio live album recording that Snarky Puppy ever did. It's that bass.
Is it this one?
It's also that one. So,
digging it. Right? Like,
Sure it is, yeah.
yeah.
Damn, dude, you sound good on that.
It's so interesting to me, Michael, because on that, I mean, that's a better recording, first of all, right? I mean, than the one we heard of your Ken Smith, to be fair. But everything that you're playing somehow comes out better, even the nuance on that recording and on that instrument than on the Ken Smith. It's like, because of the evenness of low end or something, I feel every articulation that you're playing. And I think sometimes that's a misnomer, that the P-bass isn't articulate or that the P-bass is a tugboat, right? In this recording, man, I hear every idea. Do you feel that?
yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of factors. I think one of the main factors is also that things were clearer in my head about what I wanted to play. And also my control of the instrument, my musical control was several years more advanced in that moment than it was, I mean, maybe that was like 8 years after that first video. So, but I do agree with you that the P-bass, I feel like the P-bass only sounds unclear for people who don't know how to play clearly.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I think anyone gets on a Ken Smith and the sound is... It's not always clear, actually. I mean, I have to say,
through the mix like a knife, doesn't it? Yeah,
exactly. Anyone gets on a Ken Smith and the thing cuts. You might get a lot of kind of like collateral damage sound, because of all the frequencies that are coming out of the Ken Smith. Yeah. But with a P-bass, it's like the P-bass is more like you have to know what you want, and if you know what you want and you deliver it, it's like it goes right through. It's amazing,
And I don't mean to say that, it's just this instrument switch and now suddenly things are amazing because of the P-bass, right? Obviously, it's about your playing, it's about your intention. But there is something about just that sound. Now, it'd be interesting to hear you on that Ken Smith. It would probably, like you say, sound a lot like the P-bass, if you got back on that instrument now. But it's a testament to your intention married with that sound, that classic sound. Geez, it's good. Would you be willing to grab that bass and show us just a bit of that like palm mute vibe that you get?
Yeah,
you
sure.
do.
So yeah, I mean,
sounds great. Yeah,
a lot of it is coming from. I mean, it's a sound that I hear in my head that's coming largely from like the old Motown great bass players, Jamerson, Carol Kay, this whole thing where there would be foam, next to the bridge, and I have this really cool thing called the Nordy mute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Made by Casey Nordstrom, right?
Yeah, same.
And and the Nordy mute is amazing. And then you can play with your fingers and really get and still have this old school sound. But let's call it the poor person's Nordy mute, which is the palm on the strings and then the thumb. And what I really love about this is that, like Jamerson, you're only using one digit. And the sound of playing multiple notes rapidly, let's say, with one digit is very different from playing multiple notes rapidly with two digits, similar to when you see a drummer playing a hi-hat. A drummer playing a hi-hat groove that sounds like this like tucka 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 tucka, no tucka tucka chugga tucka 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 chugga. If they're playing with one hand, it sounds like that.
Disco.
And if you hear them playing it with one hand, it's like, you know, it has this thing, this James Gadsden, of course, one of the masters of this.
Yeah.
It has this different kind of energy because it's more difficult physically. So you can't make every note sound completely identical, right? And that's what's really nice about using the single digit thing. So, I mean, as a simple example, if I play like that's with two fingers. It's even hard for me to do it because I'm so used to hearing the sound in my head with one, but and if I play it with one finger, if I play it with my thumb, it's really, that's kind of pushing the limit of the speed that I can do it with.
Yeah.
But you really feel this difference, you know?
You do.
And especially if you're playing James Jamerson bass lines, you know, like stuff that's moving around the neck. And if you're really only using like the hook, you know, the Jamerson hook, it's so fun and you get this crazy sound, you know? You know, and articulating everything, right? Kind of like Jocko, like Jamerson and Jocko both were like non-hammer-oners.
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
I'm much more of a hammer-oner, but also it's so fun sometimes to just play like everything and not,
yes.
you know? So the muting thing, what I love about it is I love feeling the string vibrating under my palm. This is like a very satisfying feeling, and it allows you also, according to how much it's vibrating under your palm, for you to let up a little on the string with your palm or depress a little more. So like I'll do it kind of maybe working up. So this is like very, very undepressed. My tone is at like 10% right now. In general, when I play the bass, I use the tone knob like an organ player. So I'm switching my tone sometimes every 3 or 4 seconds when I'm playing live.
Got it.
Like it's a thing that I started to do because it just felt like certain phrases needed to be brighter and certain phrases needed to be darker. But for now, I'll keep it set at like 10, 20%. This is very light. Now a little more. Now a lot. Now I'll stay with a lot.
Hey.
It's like when you're rocking between go 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 gong, go 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 gong. You know, if you did that with two fingers, it just wouldn't sound right. Where it's the particular pocket of that ba 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 boom. When you do that, like with one finger, there's a huge difference.
I think you hear everything too, because it's natural with two fingers that it's gonna kind of blend together a little bit, but because you have to do so much effort with the one finger, everything really shoots out, you know? I mean, you could do the same thing like I'll mute with my left hand muting, so, which is also nice. But sometimes you don't have so much control, right?
Yeah, and if you play pinky, right, then you don't get the mute.
Exactly, you can't physically, right? It's a very different sound. It's nice, but different.
Yeah. That's that like Rocco, Danny Moe vibe.
Yeah. So, I mean, they just have different sounds and different purposes, and sometimes it's nice to play like that. Like maybe I would play like that on the verse with the left hand mute.
Yeah.
You know, and then when it goes to the vamp, like then switch to the thumb to give
a little more of that.
Right. So then you really
drum.
feel the low end kind of kicking in more on the, you know, I mean, one of the main reasons why I love playing a P bass is because the technical options are so limited. You have volume, which I always keep dimed, like at 10, always.
Yeah.
And then you have tone, which you have between 1 and 10, right? Or 0 and 10. That's all you have, like, on the instrument to change. Everything else is technique. It's about how hard you play. It's where you position your right hand. It's how much you mute. It's like how long the notes are. And so you enter this kind of sea of infinite technique options that are completely independent of the bass. The bass is almost kind of like a blank canvas. It's not really dictating much for you. And I feel more kind of free with less options, ironically, I guess, paradoxically. Yeah.
When you're playing, Mike, as well, there's like such a, to your earlier point, there's almost like, it's 50% notes, it's 50% percussion. It's like, there's just this, like, it's like a drum, right? It feels like you're playing sort of like, just there's so much percussion within the actual fundamental of the note that it's like a bass drum almost. To get that within your playing, do you have a thicker string? Do you, like for me, I'm just listening to you play. I've got no idea what strings you're playing, but they sound thick. If you were like, yeah, dude, they're like, why is as thick as you are? I'd be like, yeah, sounds like it. Yeah. So, but what's the vibe? Like, what are you using?
I have the two strings that you didn't hear me play at all then are the two strings that are heavier.
The D and
so
the G.
My D and the G are like a little heavier than the E and the A. These are Dunlops that I think they're medium or medium heavy or medium and then heavy on the, I don't know. I don't know because I haven't changed the strings in 5 years. You know what I mean?
You're not using like massively fat
No.
No.
I mean, it's not really necessary. I mean, I think if you hear the sound in your head, then you get it from the instrument. So,
maybe that feeds into what you were saying earlier about playing softer, you get a thicker note. So it sounds like this hugely fat string when you're playing it, but it's actually the way that you're playing it because the waveform looks like a sausage. to quote you.
Sausages.
Yeah, I love it. It's so
You
satisfying.
want it to
when
look
you
like a
said
sausage, not a, what was it?
not a speaker cone.
Not a speaker cone. Yeah.
Yeah.
With that sound though, like have you ever found yourself in situations where you're playing in a band and I'm sure that most of the stuff that you play now, you have a pretty good idea of what's coming, when you might be called to do a solo. You know the vibe, right? But have you ever been on the P bass and somebody's like, yeah, like do a solo, and you're like, this isn't like for this vibe right now, me playing a solo on a P bass is just gonna be hard to get through in the actual vibe of the band in that moment. Have you had that experience? And if you have, how have you sidestepped that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the only moment in which a P bass is not a good soloistic instrument is if the band is playing very loud,
Right.
and not giving any space and very bright, basically, you know? In this situation, and you don't have any effects. You know, I mean, what I would do if the band was doing all that and I had effects is I'd just turn on a fuzz pedal or something and then just kind of rock out, you know? Not develop some motivic, you know, just play.
Or maybe use like that. What did you used to use? You use the micro poggers as well. Yeah.
When you asked about the soloing thing, I was just about to mention that I used to take 80% of my solos with a pog or a micro pog, which is an octapedal that goes up an octave.
Yeah.
Now the octapedal that I use for that is the Poly Blue, I think is what it's called, the MXR.
Is that the MXL one?
Yeah, that goes an octave up and an octave down stuff. But in those days, back in the day, you know, I used to use a Pog, and I used to use it most of the time. And I was playing in a band. I just started playing in a band called Fork.
Yes.
With the keyboard player from Rider, Henry Hay, and Jason Thomas and Chris McQueen, who are both in Snarky Puppy, was a quartet. And I was always soloing with this Pog, and Henry was like, dude, would you please take a bass solo, you know? And I was like, what? I am taking a bass solo. He's like, that's not a bass solo. Like, when you have the octave pedal on going up an octave, it doesn't sound like a bass. It's a guitar solo. Like, please take a bass solo. And then I realized, wow, man, I've been using this pedal as a crutch because every note that I play, it works because of the register.
Because of the register. Yeah.
But when you play a bass solo with no effects, you have to use other devices, musical devices.
Yes.
In order to communicate what you're trying to say, you know? Above all, rhythm. You can't rely on color tones. Like if we're playing over a C major 7, right? And I play a low F sharp. I mean, that sounds very different from an F sharp up an octave above there. No? I mean, it sounds beautiful if I play it up there. And if I play it here, sounds terrible.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So it's like I can't rely on my like hip concept of harmony or whatever, you know, to solo. I have to do other things. I have to be rhythmically interesting, you know, and for me the best example of this, also you have to use space. You have to be rhythmical and you have to use space. And the best example of this for me is that classic legendary Willie Weeks bass solo on Donny Hathaway Live.
Yeah, dude.
Everything
is everything.
Yes.
Right? You know, with that like crazy like a whatever. That's so badass.
Yeah,
or whatever. You know, where he goes in at the end. But most of what he's playing is like down here. You know.
Yes.
You know, I mean, and he's just telling a story.
You're just playing rhythms. Yes.
Right? He plays that, you know, he plays
so
all these
good.
really
So
super
good.
hip things. He's just, it's like all the phrases have a lot of meaning and they're performed with this beautiful sound and a lot of space. And they're telling a story. It's very conversational. It's not random. It's not riffs or licks or whatever. And you know, that solo always inspires me. Anytime that I'm like, someone says, take a solo, and I feel like this is not a great moment for a bass solo. And I start to feel like they're stupid for asking me to do this. I always think like, WWWWD. You know, what would Willie Weeks do? You know what I mean? Because you know he would definitely like play something that was interesting. You know what I mean?
Sure would.
And
yes.
So that really changed my whole concept. Like when Henry told me that thing, like take a real bass solo, please. You know, and then I started having to try to develop this other way of playing that wasn't just about melodicism. It was also about rhythm. It was about space. It was also about remembering that a solo doesn't have to feel soloistic. You know, it doesn't have to
feel like a sax.
Totally, exactly.
Right.
We think, oh, bass solo, you know, whatever, like all these kind of things. But a solo could really just be like.
Right.
You know, I mean.
And everybody would go, oh, because you're
Yes.
building anticipation, right?
Totally.
In the crowd, everyone would be like, oh, what's coming next? Versus you come out of the shoot just playing your licks and it's over.
Right.
Yes.
And also, I'm doing what the bass is designed to do.
Right.
The bass is not designed to play. I mean, you can do it, but it's like, it sounds way better on a saxophone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But a saxophone can.
It's worth pointing out, though, to everybody that you're a great soloist.
It's true.
Just, you know.
Well, that's very debatable. I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah, like I think that you're a great soloist. And one thing I'd love to talk about as well is when you are soloing, when you're not playing just rhythmically or have like you're using like a rhythmic motif, when you do decide to, take it up into the upper register, how you're thinking around those chords.
Sure.
And the harmony that you're playing around. But before we do, I'd love to play everybody a clip with the POG, so people can hear what it actually sounded like in context to what you were talking about. Is that
Absolutely.
Cool?
Yeah, of course.
It's like I've prepped.
It's almost like you've done your homework. I mean, yeah. I mean, you keep asking me like, can I play these things? But I would say no, but I know that even if I tell you no, you're going to still play them. So I'm just being polite and saying yes.
Check this out. I also love that these are like such blasts from the past for you. You know, stuff that, I don't know, Like, I imagine you're like me. Like, I never watch any videos of myself. I kind of hate it. So I imagine you're the same. So these are videos that have existed for a long, long time. So
I was so thin then and shorn.
Sure, you are very shorn. Yeah. Check this out. And I don't think that the pod comes in until a little bit into it, actually. So this is just PBass.
Yeah, with an MXR carbon copy delay, I think.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I love this line here. Oh, yeah. So that's the pod coming in there, right?
Yeah.
How young does Cory look in this video? It's outrageous.
Yeah.
How young was Cory?
Oh my God. I mean, this is what this is. I made this video the month that Mark Bass endorsed me. I endorsed them. I endorsed them, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think so.
Who's the endorser and the endorsee?
Yeah, it's fuzzy.
That's dependable
always fuzzy. Yeah.
I
within
endorse
history. Within
I endorsed
history,
them, right?
I think that you endorsed them.
I endorsed them. So when they became my endorsees that month is when I made this video. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't matter. Yeah, endorsees. When I began endorse, this is the month that I began endorsing.
When you guys hugged and decided
Yes.
to go on a beautiful journey together.
That's right. They sent me this amp. I made this video
Yeah.
to say thank you for the amp. Which is probably why that bass solo was 2 choruses too long. I guess I felt like I really
Dude,
needed
it's
to...
killer. I'll tell you what.
I'm glad you feel that way. That was really painful to me. But it's fine. It's good. That means that I'm not worse now than I was then. So we're good.
What about that was painful to you though, Michael? Like what do you
Time.
hear that you're like?
First off, I'm not flowing with... we really doing this? We'll do this. I'm not
Do it.
flowing with the band. First off, I'm like definitely thinking about chords and I'm playing over chords. I'm listening, of course, because I like to listen to other people play music. But in this moment, I'm listening, but it's really like I'm thinking about playing. I'm not thinking
There's
about
chords to maneuver around, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. And I'm not like flowing. I'm thinking. You know, that's obvious. The time is very bad. The time of the phrases is very bad. There's not a lot of space. I also don't think I'm really telling much of a story. There's some nice phrases every once in a while, but there's not really like a thing that's going through. I mean, I would definitely play very differently over that now than I did then.
For sure.
You know, but I mean, whatever. You know, I mean, that's why music wasn't really made to be recorded. That's why it just started in the last few years, right? But yeah, I know it's fascinating. It's fascinating because, like you said, Scott. I mean, I don't ever watch these videos, so it's the first time I've seen that since I made it, and it's it's definitely, you go, ooh, wow, you know. But and I think we were 20. I was 20. Was that how many years ago was that? 12 years ago.
11.
So I was 27, 28, and Cory must have been 22.
Wow. Well, dude, you sound killer. Whether you
Thanks.
think it or not, and obviously you've got the highest bar for yourself, but I think you sound killer. And I think also, to our earlier point, it is interesting to hear what a P-bass sounds like with that, you know, getting above the mix. And even at the beginning of that solo as well, it's still working within context without that pog on.
Yeah.
It
I preferred
great.
it. I much preferred it. Now with my 2023 ears, I was like, why did you turn that stupid pedal on? Not that the pedal's stupid.
How do you feel like your soloing has changed over time? I think that you've probably already answered that. More space, more motifs, you know, more phrase development as you're going through. But is there anything else that's changed?
Man, Charlie Hunter said this thing to me. I interviewed him once. He played on a record that we made called Family Dinner Volume 2. And I interviewed him and I asked him about soloing. And he said, I don't like solos. He said, I don't even play solos, really. He said, like, when people say that I'm soloing, I really think about it more as me having a rhythmic conversation with the band that I'm playing a more active role in. And I thought about that, and I was like, what an incredible concept for soloing. Like, rather than thinking of how do I tell this big story and create this contour and play all these phrases with all these scales and over all these chords, like just thinking of it more as actually just a rhythmic conversation with the band. That's the way that he thinks of it. You know, he said the guitar is a folk instrument. It's not a classical instrument. It's like, it's designed to be understood collectively, you know? And that changed my concept quite a bit about soloing, to the point where, like, often when I'm soloing, I won't play something for 7 bars just because I'll offer a rhythmic thing and see what the band has to say, and then respond to that. And then it also takes the pressure off of you, because then you're not really in the driver's seat. You're just all in passenger seats in a self-driving car, you know.
Thinking about it in terms of rhythms, too, it takes the pressure off of the narrative arc, right? Of the, I have to build this giant thing over time, right? And it's like, well, no, what if you're just playing music together? I feel like so many people are so scared of taking a solo because they think it needs to be their masterpiece. But what if it's just they're grooving with a band, right?
Yeah, and why should your conceptual approach to soloing be different than your conceptual approach to playing music the other 99% of the gig?
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Like,
true.
a solo isn't inherently different. It's still part of the song. It's still music. It's still happening during the concert. Like, why do we suddenly switch our brains into this totally different mode where we get tense, we feel pressure, we start to try to make music in a different way, we totally abandon the song thematically? It's very strange. It's very, very strange.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, and anxiety inducing sometimes as well.
Yeah, totally.
Will you play, Scott, the other clip that we have, the reluctant bass solo
Yeah,
of Mr. Michael League?
this is great. Actually, it's a great example of like taking a theme and developing it. I think it's really great.
Is it
let
me
pull it
again?
up. Sorry, Mike. Yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
Just play Tim LaFave solo.
Michael, this is
nicer.
one of my favorite moments, candid moments of you on the internet. I love this. I've watched it numerous times. I think this is an incredible moment in time, and I'm so happy it was captured.
I'm happy you're happy.
Roll it,
Ian.
Divine.
It's happening! Yeah, hit it, Mike! Now, Mike, play on this shit right here. Don't be trying to change shit. Play it right now. Damn, son! Thank you! You're the boss! Stop trying to change shit, Mike. Play it right now.
What I love about this too is that you were so reluctant to do this. You had to be almost forced by a band member to take this solo. You're like, no. And he's like, come on. And he like into the mic, who wants to see Michael, play a bass solo? And then you
fired him.
Reluctantly start
Fired
this
him.
thing.
he was out after the show.
Yeah.
Can you break down this this moment in time, please? I've always wanted to know, the BTS of this.
So, as I guess we were in New Zealand, apparently, that's what the video said. I didn't remember we were there, but I remember that night that we got to a part of this song called Sleeper. That's on a record called We Like It Here. And this song is a feature for one of the keyboard players. It can change every night which keyboard player it is, but normally when Sean Martin is on tour with us, Sean is the featured soloist with a talk box, playing a mini a Moog Lil Fatty through a talk box.
Yes.
And this moment in the song is when he normally takes
It's his.
a kind of free solo, and then he plays that melody. Boop beep, boop beep, boop boop, boop beep, boop beep, boop dee da da boop da da, boop dee da da da. He can either play that melody directly, or he can solo a little first, depending on how much time we have, depending on how he feels. So that's his moment. Like there's light on him and there's a light on the Rhodes player. But the problem is that in order to use a talk box, you need a live microphone.
Yes.
So his live microphone is going to the house. So instead of getting on and doing the talk box, he spoke to the audience and said, how many of y'all want to hear a bass solo? And of course, the answer is no one, but everybody says, "Ma!" Because whenever someone on a microphone says, who wants to blah, blah, everybody goes, "Ah!" You know, like, who wants to watch paint dry? "Ma!" You know? So he said, who wants to hear a bass solo? So of course, and I was like, dude, come on, man, a bass solo? Really? Like, it's like 4 chords on a Rhodes. No, end of the gig. Last song of the gig, actually. Last song of the night. Yeah, I remember because I almost bought him a flight between the last gig and the encore. I'm just kidding. Yeah, your plane leaves in 1 hour, so you might want to get to the airport. No, and so, yeah, so basically, and when you say that on the microphone, it's like, what am I going to do? No, Sean, I don't want to take a solo. I said, come on, man, play. And he's like, and then the more I was saying, come on, dude, you play, the more he was pushing the audience to tell me to play. So yeah, I took this stupid solo, and then at the end, I played the melody, like, come on, let's play the melody. That's when I leaned over to him.
So come on, yeah.
And then he just kept pushing me on. I don't even know what happened after that, and I probably blacked out. I was, but yeah.
Amazing.
But the vulnerability in that moment and just the dynamic of what's happening to me as an audience member. I mean, obviously I wasn't at the gig, but seeing it on YouTube, it's like how you respond and how you create those moments are everything. It's not actually, that moment to me isn't about the notes you played. It's about that interaction. It's about the space. It's about that you were in an uncomfortable environment. I didn't know that was the keys melody that you played, but you made that into a really fun moment to watch.
Well, I mean, sometimes as musicians, I think we end up accessing the best parts of our musicianship when those moments are unplanned. Right. When we're put into uncomfortable situations. Because when we have this kind of idea, here's my solo that I take every night, you have all these kind of baked in expectations. You remember your solo from last night, you remember the best solo you ever played, you remember the worst one. You kind of have this thing and you can go into the solo not really being in the moment because there's too much context, let's say, Yeah. And I'm reading this book right now called The Inner Game of Tennis, which is not really a book about tennis. It was a book written in the 70s that became kind of like a Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance kind of book that applies to everything in life. And yeah, basically the idea of like, the author really talks about this really interesting thing about when you see someone playing tennis. I'm sorry, I'm talking about tennis so much. When you see someone playing tennis,
it's good.
It's because tennis applies to everything. That's why everybody loves it. That when you see someone playing tennis, and also you can apply this to music too, when they hit a bad shot, sometimes you hear them talk to themselves. And they say like, you idiot, move your feet. Or like, follow through, or whatever. And what the author says is it's interesting because if we ask the question, who is this person talking to? Well, obviously they're talking to themselves. But one cannot actually talk to oneself. You must speak to another entity. So that we can say that the self is being divided into self one, which is the conscious analytical self that's saying you did that wrong, and self two, which is the self that's actually performing the action of swinging. Right? And I think we can apply this also to music, that we have our analytical self that's thinking about the crowd and looking at the time to make sure you don't go over your set list, and thinking about the fact that you just got into a fight with your trumpet player and like, are they vibing you or whatever. And then you have self two, which is actually just playing music. And the idea in The Inner Game of Tennis is making self one kind of melt into self two, or just kind of eradicating self one or saving it for other moments. And I think this is really fascinating and a beautiful exercise for us as musicians too, to just not let our analytical minds even be present in our gigs, but to really flow. If we're spending enough time in the practice room and we're reading enough books and having enough conversations about music and we're living and breathing music, we have everything we need already in our subconscious. We don't really need our conscious there, And so giving like precedence, at least, if you can't totally kill self one, giving at least precedence to self two, I think is good in moments like this where you're not planning on taking a solo. You can't enter with a plan because you never knew it was going to happen.
Right.
So So yeah, I think these are always magic. I'm not saying this was a magical moment. I'm saying moments in which people are asked to do something they don't expect. 3 bass strings break and you have to take a solo with your E string, right? Like this is a moment in which your subconscious is going to completely dominate, and it's going to be awesome.
I remember seeing the White Stripes on Letterman ages ago. They were doing a thing where they played a few nights in a row, and the last night Jack White went over and used Letterman's desk as a slide, right? And then his cable came out and he went back to play and sing the last chorus, but he had no guitar. Right. And he ended up, just putting the guitar behind his back or throwing it or something and just grabbed the microphone and sang the last chorus with Meg and it was the most exciting, exhilarating moment that I'd seen on television, like live music television, because of the mistake, because of the unplanned, right? Because of the technical difficulty. And boy, the confidence. I just think, like, seeing you do that too in this clip, the confidence and the reps I think that you need to feel not just completely. I mean, you've been touring and playing for a long, long time to enable you to kill self 1 and dig into self 2. I mean, don't you think it takes reps? It takes doing it and doing it and doing it.
Totally, but I think even the best tennis players in the world allow self 1 to enter the court in certain moments. It's an eternal battle that you fight. Yes. It's a daily battle that you fight, both as a musician and a tennis player, to make sure that the analytical mind doesn't kill the potential of the unconscious mind. And I could also just say that, like, I play bass. Like you said, reps. I've been playing bass for many years. I've practiced a lot of bass, and I've played a lot of gigs on bass. I also play other instruments, and on those instruments, I don't have as many reps. And it's interesting because if I have a limited time to practice for a gig, for me, my practice on bass doesn't use the instrument much. If I'm playing a gig on bass, it's more about me learning the song and learning about what's going on and like understanding the emotional character and all these kinds of things. And then I learn what key it's in and learn the notes, and then that's quick and then it's gone. But if I play a gig on oud, it's almost like I learn what I need to play on oud, and I practice that on oud, and I enter the stage incredibly vulnerable and incredibly at risk of making an ass of myself, because the only thing that I know how to do is my part. And if anything goes wrong, if my oud pops out of tune, if I break a string, if the piano has a dead note and we have to transpose the key of the song on the spot, I am dead in the water.
Right, sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yes. I think that there are musicians that live their whole lives the way that I live my life playing oud, which is like that you're only capable of playing the thing that you've practiced that is the bare minimum of what needs to be played on the gig, and you can survive. This is not the state that we want to be in when we're on a tennis court or when we're on a stage. Like, you want to feel like you are a being that has mastery and control of the environment no matter what happens, even if something unexpected happens.
Yeah, is that a case, with that in mind, is that a case of just getting to a skill level so you've got so much headroom that whatever happens, you've got all of that headroom to sort of like move into, and it's going to be okay.
Exactly. And, Bernard Wright, who was my mentor, who we watched in that first video and played in Snarky Puppy for years, Bernard always said, like, even when I'm taking a solo, I always want to never play more than 80% at my capacity. Yeah. Like, I want at least 20% of headroom at every musical moment of my life, but I'd really prefer to have 90% headroom, But you never want to be like at your limit, because then you don't have the ability to listen, you don't have the ability to play with dynamics, you don't have the ability to ornament, you don't have time to, the ability to play with time. You have no flexibility.
You're on the edge of the cliff.
You're on the edge of the cliff, and you might fall.
So you might fall off.
You might fall off, exactly.
Well, and it's uncomfortable for an audience, too. It's so uncomfortable to see a performer at capacity, especially in a musical environment. I mean, maybe it's exciting as an athlete or something to see that edge, but when I see a performer get nervous on stage or be at the edge of it's terrible feeling for me in the audience. I'm not even there, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'd much rather hear a drummer play the kick on 1, the snare on 2, the kick on 3, the snare on 4 with mega confidence than watch a really, really forced on the edge fusion drum solo.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's the thing that ultimately, as musicians, what we're conveying is emotion. We're not like, the notes aren't essential to the story that we're telling, right? We're just using notes to tell the story. But if the story gets lost because of the notes, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
what message are we sending? What story are we telling? So I'm really a fan of the playing way below your capacity.
Yeah, love it. With just going back to what we were talking about before, just to make it sort of like get into the nuts and bolts of how you're thinking when you play the bass. When you're, playing, like, my assumption is, tell me if I'm wrong, when you're playing a bass line, outlining chords, that whatever you're thinking, that process is very similar. Your approach to the harmony is very similar to when you're playing a solo or improvising, for instance. There isn't like a switch of gear where you start thinking in a different way. You're actually outlining the chords in kind of the same way, but in a different register. And is that a good approximation of how you approach it or not?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, depending on the song or the gig or the band or the mood I'm in, I mean, there's different approaches that can be taken. You can take a more rhythmic approach and use a limited number of notes, or play the same phrase and move it around rhythmically. Also, you can take like a much more harmonic approach and really cover the harmony and play like the guide tones, blah, blah, blah. Or you can take a more melodic approach and really just try to compose a melody that happens to fit. Or maybe not. Maybe it doesn't fit over those chords, but the melody is so strong that it doesn't really matter. Which Miles was like the kind of king of this, of like Miles playing these melodies where you're just like, oh, you can sing it. And then you analyze it over the chords and he's playing a major third over a minor chord. And it doesn't matter because the gravitational pull of the melody is so strong. So it can be different things, I mean, that's why in that course that I did for you all, I tried to give a lot of different examples of ways to develop your soloistic conceptual vocabulary, let's say, and to try to think about different ways to interact with songs. But I mean, yeah, you can take the same song and take dozens of different approaches conceptually.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Hey, we took a poll, Mr. Michael League, of the bass lines, of the snarky bass lines of our Instagram community, and said, what do you want to see? And the one that came to the top of the list was Lingus. And I feel like we need to talk about that one. And I'd love to talk with you just a moment about pedals as well. But Scott, will you play this Lingus clip?
I will.
Hey! Michael, would you be willing to show us that line and talk about the effects you used and and just show us what's going on with that thing?
The first bass line?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The first bass
So
line.
I'm just playing with an octave pedal. MXR Bass Octave Deluxe, my go-to for like 10 years now. The thing that's maybe making it not sound like me playing with a Bass Octave Deluxe is that Cory is also doubling it with a key bass.
Yeah.
So we're playing totally unison. So it's an E minor. The chord is just, if I remember correctly, E, A, D, just fourths. We're in 5/4. I feel it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I really think of it as like a bar of 4 with an extra beat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Rather than most 5s, which are like 2, 3, 3, 2. I feel it really like 4, 1.
Got it.
Kind of 4 plus 1. And the bass line is just, it's basically E Aeolian, but normal, kind of more pentatonic, but then kind of outlines in A minor. So it's 3, 4, 5. That's all it is. It's easy. It's just pentatonic at first, and then which is more kind of like natural minor.
It's a great line.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple.
There's a moment in there too where I feel like maybe Cory does like a mod wheel drop and you react or you look. I feel like you're looking at him. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, he did a fill that I liked. Yeah.
Oh, just a one note drop, and you notice that. That's something I've noticed about you too. Is you have really big ears, figuratively, in this music.
Not just figuratively, my friend. I got that from my mother.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, they're hidden underneath the cans. But
right now, you're lucky. Yeah, you got the Dumbo vibe going on.
But I mean, you know, you have that thing that I feel like so many great players, producers, arrangers have, is that you're hearing globally. You're never, even early on where you're sort of disparaging of your own playing, you're still hearing globally. I can tell, like you're even, you know, in that continuum solo, you're interacting, you're referencing, you're listening, even if maybe you think you're playing too much. And I just have noticed that as a thread throughout your entire career is that you hear the stage. Do you feel that?
Yeah, of course, yeah. It makes it easy when you don't like you're playing to listen to other people. I mean, at this point now, I feel good about my playing. But also, I think also in those moments in the past, I felt good about my playing. It's just now I don't feel good about my playing then.
Looking back,
yeah, exactly. But I mean, I feel, you know, like I said, comfortable. I mean, I feel like I feel like I can make music with people, and a big part of that ability to make music with people has nothing to do with my hands or my fingers or speed or whatever. It's about taste.
Yeah.
You know, I think that taste is the most kind of powerful tool that we have in our toolbox. You know, it's like the decision making.
Yes.
You know, above all. And I think that I've always told beginning bass players, you know, when they say like, you know, do you think bass is easy? And I'm like, bass is the easiest instrument. You know, I think of all the kind of modern Western instruments that are popular, bass is the easiest instrument, in my opinion, to get good at, and probably the hardest to be great at, you know, because it's just so physically easy to play this thing.
Right.
You know, one note at a time.
Easy to start.
You don't even have to know harmony.
No
you know,
bar
I mean,
chords.
you don't have to. Exactly. It's like, but the difference between good bass players to me and great bass players is 100% brain. It's brain/ears. Let's say it's about decision making. It's about, you know, a good bass player has a nice tone and technique and plays, and a great bass player knows exactly what to play when, and more importantly, when to not play anything, what sound to get in the right moments. Like, this is the kind of stuff that elevates the music and doesn't just sustain it. I feel like good musicians sustain music and great musicians like elevate it to this other space. And when you have a stage full of people who all have really fantastic ears and not only are listening to what's going on, but when they hear what's going on, they understand it. It's not just about hearing. That's what you know what I mean? Listening is also about having enough knowledge. You know, now I'm not talking about you have to go to school, but just like understanding what other people are playing. Oh, the bass drum is not playing on beat 1 anymore. The drummer is pulling that out. Or, oh, I noticed that actually the keyboard player is adding a dominant 7th to this chord that's normally a triad or whatever. And that doesn't mean that you have to play the dominant 7th.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you have to not play on 1 when the drummer's not playing on 1. If you just hear it and register
You're
it
fully
and
conscious within that situation. You're
Exactly.
not like isolated and you don't know what's going on. You're fully conscious of what's
yeah, and in that way, even if I don't change my groove at all from what I played the night before, I'm still interacting.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You know, people say like, "Oh, there's no interaction in pop music." Like, I do not agree with that at all. Like when I play pop gigs, even if I play the exact same notes and rhythms that I played for 3 weeks, I'm still interacting because I'm noticing all the things that are different that night. The differences could be in the sound of the room or in the degree to which the drummer is hitting the hi-hat. Maybe he or she's hitting it a little harder than the night before. It's like there's always ways to change the story and make it unique for that moment, because that moment is inherently unique and will never happen again. That group of people will never be in that space at that moment in time ever again. And that's what we're trying to get in touch with as musicians, is making the moment special and not just coming in with this plan and enacting the plan. You know, so I would say that would be my advice, I guess, to bass players out there is like, yeah, if you really want to be a great bass player, it's a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with this instrument, and it has to do with your musical philosophy and your concept, and also your understanding of what the people around you are playing.
You mentioned taste, and I have to just I would love for you to talk about this quote, because I have used this quote. I give you credit every time, but I love this thing. You said in a Reverb interview, maybe we'll put it in post, I never put on a pedal because it's in front of me. The only time I use a pedal is when it would be musically inappropriate to not use that pedal. Do you remember that?
No.
It sounds great though.
But
Feel free to use it again.
I'm sure you changed the words to make me sound smarter, but
No,
yeah,
that is a direct.
Right.
That is, I mean, I went and watched it, and I got that direct quote. It's from the Reverb thing that you did on Effects.
Right.
I feel like the only time I use a pedal is when it would be musically inappropriate to not use that pedal.
Right.
And boy, that is such an insight, right? I mean, and you could use that insight in so many things, but would you talk to us about your philosophy about that, about pedals, sounds, effects, and just why you chose in that moment on Lingus to play octave pedal?
Yeah, I mean, my sound guru was and will always be, I think, Bernard Wright, keyboard player that played with Snarky Puppy for a little while, because Bernard had this incredible ability to change his personality according to the sound that he had. To the point where he would never play the same phrase with two different sounds. Like it was almost like each sound had a vocabulary of phrases that belonged to it, you know? Yeah. And, and he was playing synths, so he would constantly be changing the sounds, and then you'd hear him play something and you'd go, God, that phrase is so amazing. But if he were playing a different patch, probably it wouldn't have sounded so amazing. You know, it was, I mean, the phrase is amazing in itself, but like it was
sound.
Extra because of the relationship between the sound and the phrase. And he always used to tell me, let your sound determine your phrasing. There are certain phrases that work with a fuzz pedal that don't work with an octaver, that work with a chorus pedal that don't work clean, you know, or they elicit a different emotion. And so for me, like connecting my phrasing and my vocabulary with my tone, whether that's the way I'm playing or the effects I'm using, for me is like totally vital now.
Would you be willing to pick that bass back up and show us some of that? Like, would you be like, what?
Sure.
What do you want to play?
You are so nice, Ian. You are so nice. You phrased that so nicely. Would you be willing? I'm like, I need to learn some of this. I need to learn some of this. Yeah,
you want me to be more like
such a let's shred.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, I'll give like a very, very basic example, you know. I mean, this sounds fantastic with no effects. The bass line of Sign of the Times. 3, 4, 1. 1, right?
Yeah.
Right? So that's great. Now if I play that bass line with my octaver in that register, it sounds like this. Which sounds terrible because it's too low for the octaver, right?
Yes.
So I would have to play an octave up. 3, 4.
Right.
Right?
Got it.
If I play it with delay in the original octave, also sounds terrible because delay in the low register is not a nice thing.
Yeah, the rub of the E and the G, right?
Yeah, because you're still hearing the low E ringing as I'm playing the G, right?
Yes.
But if I play something like it sounds nice because delay works well when you're playing higher up, right?
Yeah.
I think that this, you know, that the pedals kind of tell you what to do in a certain way. You know, I mean, chorus would be cool, right? Like now I'm using this Ripley Fall. This is right now. I've got what I'm playing now is the chorus on the Ripley Fall, which is made by Jam Pedals. They're a Greek company.
Okay, yeah.
So it's pretty subtle, right? So I mean, I think that it's one of those things where it's not that that certain phrases only work with one sound. I mean, it's just there's certain times where things don't work and there's certain times where things do, and you have to adjust accordingly. Maybe you have to switch the octave, maybe you have to change the duration of the note, maybe you have to switch the approach, these things. So, yeah, I mean, every sound contributes to the emotion of what you're playing, and it can contribute in the right way or it can contribute in the wrong way.
Yeah. Wicked, man.
Very true.
Mike, you've got to come back in a few months. Just, not for you, Ian, not for the audience, but for me, because I did all of this research. And come on. I've got all of these awesome questions to ask you. But seriously, I want to talk to you about your groove, your bass, your approach to bassline construction, composition. I also want to talk about the pop album that you did.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because that blew my mind. It was freaking awesome.
Thank you.
Side note, the video work on it was incredible.
That's this guy right here. You don't see him, but there he is.
Tell him it was freaking incredible. Yeah, so let's do this another time. We'll get you back on if you're cool for it. Yeah.
I'm always down.
I'll do it if you are willing, as Ian would say. If you're willing to come back on, we will have you. But thanks for coming on today. Obviously, massive thanks as well for everybody for tuning in today and listening. Where do you want to direct them to, Mike? Is it the Snarky Puppy website? Is it obviously we kicked off with all of the projects you're involved with. So out of your gazillion projects that you're involved with right now, where do you want to direct people to?
I have a website, michaelleagueplaysmusic.com, and also that's my Instagram handle without the .com. So maybe that's a nice place to go because then you can see all the different production stuff that I do and different bands and, a bunch of things that you probably have no interest in watching or listening to, but they're all there. And that's the important part. They're all present.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.
If you need more Michael League, we have you covered. Over on the Academy, we have multiple courses by Michael League that cover bass playing, composing, arranging, band leading, you name it. Michael League is talking about it over at scottsbasslessons.com. Hey, check it out. Grab a free 14-day trial in the link in the description below or go to scottsbasslessons.com. We'll see you there.